Alright, let's talk about Michael Chandler for a second because I generally believe that this dude could have been a UFC champion at one point. Like, not even on some fantasy matchmaking stuff. I mean, realistically, Chandler had the tools to be one of the scariest guys at 155. Now, I already know what some of y'all are gonna say. Bro, Chandler's washed. He only beat Hooker and Tony. That's it. And yeah, that's a fair point. Those are his really only standout UFC wins. But hear me out. I think Chandler's story is more about wasted potential than anything else. Like, in his prime, the dude was very explosive. Like, explosive as hell. Like, Yoel Romero type of explosive. Go back and watch him starch Dan Hooker under a minute. Or that front kick that sent Tony to the Shadow Realm. Even against Dustin and Patty, you can see the raw power and physicality. He was able to manhandle them at times. Because let's just say it how it is. Physically, he's a freak. But here's the thing. He's also one of the most chaotic fighters, IQ wise. Like, he fights like every round is the final round of his life. No pacing, no strategy, just vibe. I mean, recently he kind of slowed it down, but I always felt like that's what held him back. All the athleticism in the world, but the fight IQ of a rock'em sock'em robot. That's why it's frustrating, man. Chandler could have been something special in my opinion. And you know what's wild? Chandler knows exactly what he's doing. This isn't a case of a guy who doesn't realize he's making bad choices in there. He straight up said in interviews, "I'd rather go out on my shield in fight of the year than win a boring decision." That's his mindset. He's not fighting to win, he's fighting to entertain. He even said, "I want to be remembered as one of the most entertaining fighters in the UFC." So that whole reckless kill or be killed style, it's intentional. It's part of his brand. And hey, I respect it because that takes guts. But at the same time, you look at how it aged and it makes you wonder what could have happened if he dialed it back just a little bit, fought a little bit smarter, mixed in some wrestling, focused more on the winning than performance. Because if he did, we might not be talking about wasted potential, right? Alright, so here's the thing about Michael Chandler, especially when he came into the UFC. For the most part, he didn't really set things up, like, at all. I mean, he did to knock out Dan Hooker, I will admit that. But he wasn't really out there feinting for other fights or reading reactions or building attacks behind the jab. Nah, he blitzed forward and threw absolute missiles. Fast, violent, chaotic. That was the game, and it worked. Guys like Dustin, Oliveira, and Gaethje, even they had to respect that raw aggression. You could see them back up just off the threat of him launching something wild. But that just bleed style, that only works as long as you're fast enough to get away with it. And now, that window is starting to close. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still dangerous, but the room for error is way more smaller now. The real issue is that Chandler has really never built that technique base to fall back on. No clean boxing fundamentals, no layer setups, just raw speed and chaos. And once that fades, man, it gets harder and harder to keep up with these sharp, calculated killers in the top 10. And that's where it gets frustrating, man. Imagine if Chandler had spent his early career or even during his UFC run really sharpening his techniques. Like, what if he trained like a bigger Chad Mendes, someone who was still had the same explosive and power, but also learned how to move his head, work behind the jab, mix in body shots, and break guys down round by round. Chad evolved over time. He became a damn solid boxer for an NCAA wrestler. Chandler, on the other hand, he just kept leaning harder into that chaos. You give Chandler a real boxing fundamental, even just decent shot selection and defense, and now you're talking about a guy who might actually become a champion. Not just fun fights and wild moments, an actual title holder. The physical tools were always there, but instead of refining the craft, he just kept going to war every single time. It's like he's addicted to that fight of the night energy instead of winning clean. And listen, man, I get it. Those fights made us fans. He's a real highlight machine, but man, it's hard not to look back and think what could have been if he fought smarter instead of just harder. Another thing Chandler could have capitalized on is his wrestling, because it is one of the most frustrating things about his UFC run. The guy is a D1 stud, explosive as hell, built like a tank, and yet he barely uses his wrestling. And yeah, I've seen people say stuff like, but Oliveira out-grappled him, Patty reversed him. But let's be real here, part of that isn't just about skill, it's about time catching up. Take the Patty fight for an example. Chandler got the takedown early, sure, but what happened after? Patty freaking reversed him, and not off some slick high-level sweep. He literally just scrambled and Chandler couldn't keep up. That's the kind of moment where you go, okay, young Chandler would have slammed him back down or smothered that reversal before it even started. But now, the burst he used to rely on just isn't firing the same. He's still strong and still dangerous, but the explosiveness isn't covering the gaps anymore. And since Chandler has never built a clean technical wrestling game, no pressure base control, no grinding top game, he's got nothing to fall back on when the athleticism starts to slip. And for the longest time, he didn't fight patient. But now, after all that, here he is finally trying to be patient, finally trying to be smart. You see it in his interviews, the way he talks about picking his shots, conserving energy, but man, it's too late. He's slower now, the explosiveness is fading, his window is closing, and you can feel it. The timing isn't sharp anymore. And even if the fight IQ is finally starting to click a little, not too much honestly, the physical tools that made him special just aren't there anymore. So now we're looking at a version of Chandler that's trying to be technical, trying to fight smart, but the body isn't just cooperating. And that's the real shame, because if this version of him mentally was around 5 to 6 years ago, we might have been talking about a potential UFC champion. Instead, we're talking about of what could have been. And let's be real, Chandler is still explosive. Like, the power is still there, the athleticism still flashes in moments. He still can blast forward with that big right hand or hit a quick double leg if he really wants to, but it's not the same. That freakish game-breaking explosiveness that he had in his prime, it's dull, the speed is a little bit dipping, the burst is shorter, and without the elite level pop to cover up them holes, the flaws are way more obvious. Now, in my opinion, there's a lot more problems now. I mean, for starters, that one round gas tank, that's been a huge problem. After 5 minutes, he's flat-footed, slower on the trigger, and just kind of stands there getting tagged. He doesn't move his head, doesn't really block punches, and it's not like he's tightening up his defense as he ages. He still walks into the fire like he's 28 and invincible, but he's not. And that style only works when you got energy to keep that pressure up. Once that gas runs out, he turns into a target. And here's the craziest part. His fight IQ hasn't gotten better with time, trust me. If anything, it's gotten worse. He's not making adjustments mid-fight. He's not playing to his strength. He's still headhunting, still chasing chaos, still refusing to wrestle, even when it's clearly the smart move. So what? You're left with a guy who's less explosive than before, slower, more hittable, and still makes the same reckless decisions. That's why I titled this video Wasted Potential, because Chandler had all the tools to be great. He could have built a smarter, more well-rounded style. He could have adapted, but he never did. And now it's like that window is closed. And I'm just going to say it how it is. The guy is cooked, bro. He hasn't won a fight since 2022 when he knocked out Tony Ferguson with that nasty front kick. And since then, he's 1-4 in his last 5 fights. And sure, a lot of those fights were bangers. And to be fair, they were competitive. He had his moments, but he still lost. And that's the thing people don't always acknowledge. Being excited doesn't erase that L stacking up on your record. Now, everyone's hoping he finally gets that Conor McGregor fight, right? That's the big matchup, the one that he's been waiting on forever. But at this point, I don't even know if that fight's ever happening, right? I think Conor checked out, honestly. Too many delays, too many distractions. If he does come back, Chandler's probably still the guy, but that's a huge if. And in the meantime, the lightweight division ain't getting any easier. Chandler's ranked number 12 now, and when you look around, the weight class, Fiziev, Joe Alvarez, it's a bad time to decline, in front of these guys. I like the idea of Chandler versus Fiziev just for the chaos alone, but if we're being real, that's a scary matchup for him. Fiziev is fresh, fast, and technical. Same with someone like Joe. Those guys are bad fights for Chandler, and as much as it sucks to say, I do think this is probably the end of Chandler coming up. Maybe 1 or 2 more fights, maybe that Conor payday if it ever happens, but the writing's on the wall. The decline is real, and the division's not waiting for anyone. Still, one hell of a run, no regrets as a fan. We got some absolute classics out of him, I will say that.